Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ongoing Mastery, Presenting and Speaking, the podcast. Welcome to 2023. I am Kirsten Rourke, and this is
I am Kelly Donovan Condren.
Huzzah! So we are going to be talking about an interview that we did in the last episode with my friend Jay Schuh. And we are talking about creativity and how it applies to your process and, as always, ongoing mastery. So, Kelly, what did you think of the interview with Jay?
I loved it. I thought it was really fun. It's clear you two have a great rapport. I don't know Jay, I've never met him, so I only know him through this interview and through reading his book, which I think you have handy right there, right? And I could hear the book in your conversation. So I thought that was really neat. I read the book to prep for our conversation today, and as I'm listening to your interview, oh, right, I hear that connection. I hear that connection. And so it was really neat for me to get to know him in that not roundabout way, but the evidence is in the work that he does.
Yes. So Jay is an educator. He's an illustrator. He's a great animator. I met him at a conference. I think it was Adobe Max like 100 years ago, and I did what I normally do, which is I was oversharing. I was just my normal Kirsten self. So within 5 minutes, I was saying things to this total stranger that you really don't say to total strangers. And he rolled with it and was like, okay, well, here. And we sat down and he started very consciously, very seriously going, so let's talk about how you're approaching this moment. And he is one of the more deliberately thoughtful people in how
Yeah.
he approaches content, how he approaches concepts. He thinks more deeply about his relationships and his communication than most people, and he's also just a really lovable, sweet, talented human being. When you listen to the episode, and I hope everyone does, I busted him on the book because the title was deliberately a joke. And it was done in Comic Sans as a tweak, as a little note to creative people to go, hey, here's this font that you hate. Have you ever thought about kind of stepping out of your own way and what it is that you're not letting yourself do? But because he didn't explicitly state that, a lot of people misunderstood and thought that he honestly, a person who's very creative, didn't know that this font was, just you don't use that font. So the joke got missed by a lot of people and the lesson got missed by a lot of people. And I kind of tweaked him a little about that.
Well, and the ultimate, you can't judge a book by its cover example, right? On the other hand, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. It's the battle of the cliches.
Yes, very much so. And what I find interesting is the thing I like about what Jay's work in this book does is and this is what you and I were talking about before the recording, is that he really uses creativity as a tool, not as a sudden burst of inspiration that you have to wait for as a gift from the gods.
Yeah, I love his points. He says, very timely for us, there are no shortcuts to mastery. One of his mantras in the book is the need to practice, practice, practice.
Yeah.
But another one is that you can't force creativity into being, but you can prepare the way. Make a
Mm-hmm.
plan for the elements of your work each day. Make lists, use the lists that the work you're going to do tomorrow is informed by the work you do today. The whole emphasis on process
Yep.
throughout the book. I'm a process person myself.
Yeah, and I think about the authors who say, well, I write X number of words every morning, whether they're good or they're bad. Some of them are garbage and I throw them out, but I have to write X. And as you know, I'm less of a process person. I'm more of a waiting for inspiration to be struck from the gods person. So it is reason why multiple times in my life, Jay has given me guidance and advice to go, Kirsten, you could just do the thing. And it's just lovely because it's true. it's doing, just buckling down and doing the thing, good or bad. I mean, that's how drawing works. I've done, I'm trying to change my drawing style because my natural drawing style is something that I want to evolve away from. And I was whining to my husband about the fact that I'm really having trouble doing that. And he goes, well, that's because you don't. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'd really rather just bitch about it. Thanks.
Rude.
I'm like, oh, I guess we're being serious and real. Okay, fine. So yeah, it's one of those things. But how does creativity, now you obviously are a very creative person. I know that about you. And what I love, and I'm going to bust you on this on live camera, um,
Great.
you don't think that you are a theatrical person, a theater kid. And I know you, and I know you are. And it kills me that you're like, no, that's not who I am. And I'm like, have you met you? So can you tell me how creativity shows up in your life and your work?
So the difference is key. I don't think of myself as a theater kid, as a performer, but I do think of myself as a creative person, right? And so the way creativity shows up for me, particularly in my classroom, and this is connected to something you and Jay were talking about last week, is I try to be creative in the way I talk about writing, in the way I talk about literature with my students. I teach at a business college. Every degree there is a business degree. There are no humanities majors, English majors. I'm never going to convert someone to the team. So I'm already working with an audience that has a less likely than average interest in the course.
Mm,
Some students are there because they've had me before. Some students are there because the course title is interesting and they don't know anything else. And some students are there because it just fits their schedule. But none of them are there because it fulfills a thing they need to know for their graduation requirements, right? It fills a category, intermediate literature, but it doesn't fill a specific, I want to take this class kind
mm,
of niche. And so I have to work pretty hard
yeah.
to make sure everybody is with me, to make sure that everybody is interested in the material. So last semester, my course on urban literature, I started with clips from Hadestown,
Hmm.
in part because I'm obsessed with this musical, and in part because it's very accessible. And there's a sharp in the story of Hades and Persephone, a sharp nature versus urban built environment. Nature is good and wonderful and holistic, and the built environment is artificial.
Mm,
There's a couple of lines in one of the songs where Persephone is horrified by the electric city that Hades has built, and she says, "It ain't right, it ain't natural." And
mm,
so ways like that, the no one had seen Hadestown, so we weren't really having a discussion about the musical. But by starting with something fun, accessible, we all can kind of bop our heads a little bit. It gets them right into the content before they've read anything. Because day
nice.
one is still a class. We still have work to do, but nobody's read anything yet. And so, how to get our conversation rolling in a way that is fun and engaging and builds momentum.
That's it. The priming the
So,
way.
yeah,
You prime the
exactly.
path for them. And one of the things I want everybody listening and everybody watching to take away is that when we're talking about the ongoing mastery of presenting and speaking, this is not just for a particular type of person. It's not just for speakers. It's not just for, coaches. It's not just for trainers. It's all of it. Kelly's a professor. I'm a technical trainer. These are the areas that we do a lot of our performance in. But, as a speaker, I also have only a very short window to get people on board with me.
Yeah.
And I'm one of the few speakers at conferences that I start with music. I put music on in the 15-20 minute dead window before I'm allowed to talk when everybody's coming in, because that period for me is soul draining. If you're just standing there, like, okay, waiting for people to come in, or you go up and you meet the occasional person, hey, hi, what brought you today? That for me never clicked. I know it's a really great technique, and for some people, it works beautifully.
Hmm.
But for me, it works better to put on some music and to get up there and to do a little goofy dance and just be in my body and moving and kind of show people, like, hey, this is the energy you're coming into. This is the
Yeah.
experience. And I've chosen my audience by shifting my music over time.
Hmm.
So I take account of who I'm presenting to. Like in your case, you have to adjust who you're presenting to. So with your creativity, what I'd really like to call everybody on for, this episode is, please think about, when you're doing your creative piece, how are you shaping the introduction of that to the person or the people you are trying to reach? Like, what is the message you need them to hear? And what
Yeah.
do you need to bring in to open the way for them to hear it, to
Well,
prime
and
the path?
you talk about that last week with Jay. He says he got into being a user design person in part by being empathetic, by thinking about audience,
And
right?
the
Angel?
dog is helping. Hi, Angel. Thank you for joining the podcast.
What does his audience need to get from the software that he's designing? How can he get it to them via the user interface?
Yep.
Right? It starts with empathy. It starts with the audience. What do they need? How can you deliver it to them so that they get it? Right? It's not all about what do you know and how can you show off what you know. It's how can you connect with other people, because it doesn't matter how much you know if they don't get it, it just stops.
Yeah, and as we always go back to in work training, if your presentation, if your speech is not taking into account the people who are attending, it should be a video.
A video.
Now, we're doing this on video, but even through that, we're still thinking about the people that we have invited and we're welcoming in and we're trying to bring in to be part of the podcast and part of the community, because we have a
Hmm.
specific message. So
Yep.
it's really, really important, whether you're doing sales, whether you're doing teaching, whatever it is, the content is the last step. It's not the first step. And it makes me absolutely freaking insane that people are like, well, I have my content down cold and I've got it structured and scaffolded. I'm ready. And it's like, no, you started at the end. You're not ready. You started at the last step. You have to think about what your goals are, who you're trying to reach, what you want the outcomes to be. And then what are the core messages? And then how are you going to try to reach those people? And then the content. Because your
Yeah.
content, if it doesn't change, if your content doesn't change based on your audience, it should be a video, right? If your content is
Yep.
not morphed, if you are not adapting in the moment to your audience, make a recording and then you've got a perfect version of it. Go you. And if you want, you can put that out live and go into the chat and do a replay class and basically be like, here's the video. I'm going to be in the chat responding to you. So you'll have live interaction with people. But please think about the audience. It's all about human connection. It's all about conversation. That is everything that we do.
That's one of the things as I'm starting a class, I am always trying to get a read on my international student body. I've got at least, one third to one half of students in any given class are not Americans, but
Mm-hmm.
come from a wider range of countries around the world, South America, Middle East, Asia. And so looking for those commonalities
Yep.
of pop culture references or news watching habits, or, do we have a sports oriented class? Sometimes I'll have a lot of athletes, right? Trying to find those ways. I'm still going to make my 80s pop culture jokes because that's who I am and that's who I find funny. But I also have to sometimes give the quick little YouTube thing so they know what I'm talking about. And then often followed by some kind of self-deprecating, trust me, it's funny, you just weren't born for it yet. Which that itself is funny. And then they laugh.
Yeah, I recently I went a little further down a rabbit hole than I should have with my humor, and I pulled up a really obscure geeky reference, and nobody got it. And the moment literally just landed like thud, and I went, okay, I overshot. You could Google it. Here's what it is. My bad. And I moved on because I acknowledged, I'm like, yeah, okay, I went a little far off the path because I went and took a sub character from Babylon 5 that we were doing something, and I was like, oh no, this is wrong tool. Never use this. Zathros says. And nobody not only had watched the show, but nobody knew this one character that was on for like 2 episodes. So yeah,
Shocking.
okay. Well, all right,
Shocking.
I admit, I went a little far off the beam that one, but um, you know, I have to be careful. One of the reasons I have a backdrop is because my set behind me is, my china cabinet in the office I have in, and it's full of little tchotchkes and photos and stuff, and that is can be very, very distracting for people if it's something where it's something unusual. If it's pots and vases and plants and books, that's all normal stuff. If it's, in my case, a porg that is sitting peeking out, I've had somebody go, "Oh, you have an owl," and I'm like, "No, that's a porg from Star Wars." And
Yep.
it makes me sad. It's like, no, you're not a geek like me. Okay. So I'm hiding that stuff with my geeky background because there's too many odd things and it's too distracting. And right now it's full of nutcrackers and my little Christmas stuff. I will say, however, as you folks get to know me, if you find an awesome, wonderful, quirky nutcracker, let me know because I need it in my life. It is my thing. So
Do
there
they
is
all
that.
have to be do they all have to be clearly human nutcracker, or can they be I've seen riffs
I've got the
on
rat.
I've seen riffs on like a flamingo nutcracker, like a tropical
Ah,
Florida theme, for
it,
example.
well, as long as they're the classic, like full real Nutcracker, the more, expensive ones,
Hmm.
that are the part of the original series type. So not the ones that like I will go to Christmas tree shops and look and be like, no, those aren't it. So I have one that is the Rat King from uh, one of the now I'm blanking on the ballet, and I have
The
like a
nutcracker.
classic Viking, the Nutcracker. There we go. I have the Nutcracker from Nutcracker. I have the Rat King, and so those. But it's a very specific geek thing of like the originals, like Christmas cookies are Pfeffernusse. That's the Christmas cookie. Other cookies are great, but Pfeffernusse is the Christmas cookie. It's my thing. Like eggnog has to be made with like full, not diet, not discount, not no. It has to be like something that would stop your arteries just by looking at it. That is eggnog. So a little off the beam there.
Little.
So it's January. It's January 4th when we're recording this.
Tis.
What can you just want to do a callback to a conversation we had earlier. You have a word of the year that is your focus word. What is your
I
word
do.
of the year, Kelly?
My word for 2023, my focus word is joy.
I'm so thrilled with that. I am so happy with that because that is, yes, joy. Joy would be great. And mine, which I thought about after you had brought up this concept for me, mine is definitely transformation.
I love that.
Mine is
I love
transformation.
that.
This is the
In
year.
part,
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I love it in part because it's about process, and I'm a process person,
You
right?
are.
Transformation is an action that unfolds. It's not an instant thing, right? You can't transform in the snap of a finger generally,
Yeah.
right? If you think about caterpillar to butterfly, right? You need that chrysalis stage, and I'm not even sure how long it lasts, but it's not instantaneous.
No. No. And I know I need to focus on that because I what gets me down is when I lose track of what my ultimate why is, what my ultimate goal is with my work, which is I want to make a difference. I want to transform somebody's life. I want to actually leave the world better than I found it. So
Yeah.
through that, I want to do that by teaching and helping and coaching and having people, have a better experience with their presenting because I help them make it easier for themselves. And
Yeah.
so that I need to keep focused on to stay in the right mindset. So for those listening, for those watching, what is the word you want to focus on this year? 2023, we can change it up. The last couple of years have been rough, and let's have a fresh start. I'm not doing any, promises of the new year. I'm not doing resolutions. My resolution is no, I'm not doing resolutions, but I'm going to focus on transformation. And I love the idea of focusing on joy. So what is your word? We have an ongoing mastery presenting and speaking group in LinkedIn. Hi, Chris. or, or, or is that
You
Maeve?
heard that.
I heard
No,
that.
that was Chris.
Hi, Chris. So we have ongoing mastery presenting and speaking, the LinkedIn group. Please come join. That's a place for us to do stuff. I'm going to be starting to do lives directly in there just for that group and also be posting. We're starting a newsletter. We're putting in the podcast episodes, other stuff, and a place, to answer these questions. What is your word for 2023? So with that, I think please, if you haven't seen the Schuh interview, watch it. The book on brilliance is actually brilliant. It is a pretty clever. It's a smart book about thinking about creativity differently.
Yep.
And other than that, is there anything we need to, as a going away thought, Kelly?
Well, the link obviously for the book is in the show notes.
Fantastic. And we can dig up the obscure reference to that Sathros and put that in the show notes too.
Well, we need to educate, so yes, clearly.
Yes, exactly, because this is wrong tool. Never use this. All right. And on that, thank you, everybody. We will see you next week. I hope that your holidays were wonderful and stress-free and not full of relatives that you were trying to avoid. And if so, at least it's over. And we'll see you next time. Have a good one.
Cheers.